are leaving hired, Mr. Stark.
Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Comic Book Chronicles. That glorious, glorious applause. I am your host, Roddy Cat, and you can find me at Roddy Cat on the Twitters, and you can also find me at Roddy Cat on, I guess, Instagram. Sure, go for it. I don't really post that much there. Also, News Nerds Need on Twitter, News Nerds Need Reddit, and of course, CB Caps on Instagram, which I'm dreadfully lacking. And with me tonight is the man behind the sound effects, the coolest man in Brooklyn. I think he's the one that's putting a force field over certain areas of place we don't know. _70 on Twitter and Instagram.
What's up, everybody?
Exactly. And also with us tonight with his I'm not sure if adorable is the word, but his
you gotta watch the video people. You gotta watch the video.
Sometimes you have to watch the video to see, because sometimes he comes up with some craziness, because he has for those not listening, he has a Superman hat, but on top of that a little mini.
It's a little top hat,
little mini, yeah,
little patriotic top hat.
Little Sam hat, yeah, exactly. But anyway, it is PC and _ Dirt.
This is my 2 snaps up in a circle.
Oh, no! He did have a hat on like that at one point.
Oh no,
that totally happened. But you can find PC and _ Dirt on Twitter, and I don't know if he's on Instagram or not. But if you're on Instagram or not, you haven't been.
I have an account there, but
you just don't really use it.
No.
Yeah. Hey, once that Vine thing comes back into play, we'll see what happens then. But also, popculturenet.com, popculturenetwork.com, popculturenet on Twitter, and of course, his umbrella of sites under the Pop Culture Network umbrella.
I'm also on VK. I'm on MeWe. I'm on WeMe, whatever it is.
Are you on WeMe?
Yeah, I got one. Why not? What was the other? I'm on Reddit. I'm on I don't know. I've got,
you have to put the link
anytime a thing comes and it's like, hey, you should make an account. I'm like, why not?
Yeah, I've checked out MeWe. I'm not sure what.
I've been on Minds. I've been on Allo. Ello.
Hello. Yeah, Ello's still around actually.
Actually, I got a notification from it the other day, and I was like, oh right, I forgot that was a thing.
Right, and that other the Vero, that one. I think that one might be shut down already. But anyway, regardless, he's all over the place. You have to, like I said, put the links in the if you want to put your links in the thing. Okay. Well.
If I do that, people will just find me. So
I mean,
I'm better off just hiding under my rock, being quiet.
Okay. So say you. But speaking of hiding or finding people, you can find this podcast on cspn.us. That's the Coastal of the Podcast Network. We can find this particular program and others. I'm not gonna like it because I think we're pretty much the only one like it on that network. Because you can find I'm not gonna go. So you can find like 2 or 3 wrestling shows and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, there's a proliferation of wrestling shows on the network right now.
Well, yeah, because AEW.
Yeah, providing some content right there, right?
Yeah, the show was fantastic, by the way.
Oh, that's right. You watched it too. Yeah.
Yeah, that the Double or Nothing was a fantastic. That was worth the full price that they charged.
I'll take your word for that. But you can also subscribe to wait, do you have a wrestling podcast or no?
Yes, actually. Transitional Champion podcast.
That's what I thought I saw. Okay.
Yeah, but we only do it once a month now. We did it every week for the road to WrestleMania. Now that it's over, it's like wrestling's terrible, so we'll only do it once a month. But then once AEW starts up, then maybe we'll do a little more often.
It doesn't matter.
Exactly. Well, cool. There you go. You can find that there if you are so inclined. And you can also find us on Google Play and Apple iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts. You can also find us on Spotify and the Cold Slither Podcast SoundCloud page. And as we do every week, we will start off with the comic books of the week, and we are going to start off this week with the last issue of the DC's event book, Heroes in Crisis, number 9. Oh God, no.
Huh? What?
Okay.
No. We can't even joke about that.
No, we're not.
That's the point of Heroes in Crisis.
It's true. It is true.
See, that's a meta joke. That's a meta.
Well, something like that. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So ultimately, I joined the pre-show a little late, and my reaction apparently mirrored the reaction of all of my co-hosts, which is, what the heck was that about?
Pretty much.
Yeah, referring to Heroes in Crisis number 9. So just to get everyone up to speed, we found out who the quote-unquote killer was,
which we knew about from last issue. However, this was the expo dump,
right?
And,
exactly
why that happened.
Right. What I was going to say is this is the issue where they figure out a way to quote-unquote solve it.
Yes, by throwing a whole bunch of timey-wimey rigmarole into it.
Right.
But that's the message.
Shout out to Endgame.
Yeah. Or any other, time.
Yeah, time travel.
To the future or
Hot Tub Time Machine.
I keep getting brought up.
Oh boy.
But in that case, this one didn't seem to make, and I dare say this loosely, nearly as much as any of those movies did. And the explanation, well, granted, the explanation is probably solid. However, it's still crazy, which we will probably dabble around in. But you were going to say something, Doug?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, I have been buying this in hard copy since it started coming out. And as you know, my enjoyment of this series kept going down with every issue. A couple weeks ago, there are 3 comic book shops in town. I go to all 3 of them just because I'm that type of person. I know everybody. We all get along, even though I worked in a different store. I've worked at 2 out of the 3 at different times, whatever.
Sure.
So I go into one of them, and the guy is like, "Hey, if you have any back issues you want to get rid of, I'd love to buy them off of you. I'm having a hard time filling the back issue stuff." I said, honestly, I've got tons of stuff. I ended up taking 13 short boxes.
Wow.
To him. And amongst those, I put in all those copies of Heroes in Crisis. I dropped it from my pull list, and I didn't even purchase this final issue. I got rid of it. I flushed it. When we were going through the new comics on Tuesday night, sorting them and putting them in for subscribers, because I still help out with that, I read it. So I knew, what, well, it was, I read it. I say I read it. I read it in about, 90 seconds, where you're just kind of like, yep, yep, dumb, and put it back. So this, I'm glad this long nightmare is finally over.
Mm-hmm.
The dark day is now behind us. But this was, like you were saying, like, what was the point of this? This is one of those things where, like, I guess that Tom King, he, as we know, he worked for the CIA. He spent time over in the hot zone. We know he went through some stuff. When he first started doing like Sheriff of Babylon, and there was some PTSD stuff going on, and it was set in Iraq, and you were like, okay, this is an interesting multi-layered story.
Stuff out.
And then you got Vision, and it's like, well, he's a robot android. How, alive is he really? And then asked some of those questions and dealt with horrible things happening and how he reacts, and kind of like those episodes of Next Generation with Data, whether or not he was really alive, whatever. And you're like, okay, that's interesting. But then he's been doing this with Batman for the last couple of years, and he did it with this series. And it's just like everything he's doing now is just, I guess it's therapy for him, which good for him if he can work through it. But at the same time, it's like it's the same one note that's getting played over and over. And with some characters it works and it's interesting, and with some characters it's just depressing and sad, and I guess there's a point to be made there, but I'm trying to be entertained here, and I want the story to kind of make sense. And this story, it from the very beginning, you thought, well, there must be some sort of mental manipulation going on because of the way certain people saw certain stuff. And it's no, he's just super fast. So he was able to move things around while they were looking. So they both thought the other person did it. And it felt like such a cop out to the story, and it felt like such a weak ending for what actually happened. It's one of those where it almost felt like the DC Challenge series. It's like, the one writer writes the first one and ends it on a cliffhanger, and the new writer has to come on and figure out how to get out of the cliffhanger. It kind of felt like he worked his way up to like issue 5 or 6, and then just kind of went, I don't really know what to do here. And maybe he asked around and got some ideas, and time travel, sure, why not? We'll that's always a good escape. But it just felt like it died, just went off a cliff. The story it lost all interest. The meaning that he was trying to hammer home, he kind of hammered home like issue 2. I don't know that we needed 9. Was this 9 in this? Yeah.
9.
Yeah. So I'm now at the point, the news came out, of course, that he's been taken off Batman, and now I'm just kind of like, I'm ready for him to move on to something else.
Well, except for he has been taken off of Batman, but he's still got a Batman project. But we'll see.
Right.
We'll talk later in the
Yeah. But I think it has, because of the relaunch and whatever with Doomsday Clock and so anyway. But yeah, so it's just like I was so excited for this when it was announced, and I was so hyped for it, and then it just.
This is a case of the mystery not worth the effort of unraveling it. So.
Right. And also it wasn't laid out in a way that was interesting as you learned. You normally you get like a nugget here and a nugget here, and in your mind you have to kind of put the pieces together. Whereas this was just very much like it got to a certain point and it's just like, oh, he did it, and that's it. And you're just like, oh, well, it doesn't fit anything else that we've read at this point. There's been no like hinting at this being the answer. It's just kind of, you got to a point and there it is. Oh, okay. Well,
there was something that was said that issue 1 probably told it all, or kind of gave away a lot of it before we got to this point, but I'm not sure. I would have to go back and read it to find out for sure.
Yeah, and that's not happening.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know, at one point it might do it before the end of the year or something. I don't know, probably not. But all I was going to say is that one is that this is basically a big roundabout for an afternoon special,
a very special episode of the DC universe,
or an after school special, like those of us of a certain vintage will know,
right?
Like this could have been settled in one of those type of issues, and they have been those issues between the two, between companies.
Right.
Like
This didn't need to be This did not need to be a 9-issue limited series. So
that being said, I don't know. So the fact that we found out that it's like, okay, well, this was, it was grounded in basically the Speed Force, and there was some hints to Flashpoint, and and the like at least it was grounded within the universe. And I'm not excusing it for that, but because sometimes there are comics who is like, hey, this happened, and you can't even explain why things happen because it's just like, I don't know, comics. But at least with this, a lot of it ended up grounded in the Speed Force by proxy, and therein, without, they didn't use the Speed Force, but they basically was like speed and being fast enough to time travel and all that kind of goodness. At least that was something that was grounded. But at the same time, like I said, we still got a good bit of timey-wimey mess. And like I said, the message, while a necessary message, especially these days and time, probably could have been, like you said, handled in way less than 9 issues, probably with a very special.
Well, and considering he already dealt with this and he's really basically dealing with the same thing in Batman with the stress and the trauma, and that was what Sheriff of Babylon was all about, was dealing with the stress and the trauma and the post-traumatic stress disorder. That was a big part of that. And then, like we said, with Vision and kind of exploring the emotions of going through this kind of stuff. So like I said, he's done this theme already. And
right. I guess if you're not reading Batman, or if you're not read Sheriff of Babylon or Batman, I guess this is something new to whoever didn't read those. But
the difference is Sheriff of Babylon was good and Vision was good. This was not.
This was not very good. I just wanted to give a shout out to a particular creative and artistic decision on the part of the creative team. Clay Mann and Tom King apparently chose to depict Barbara Gordon, aka Batgirl, in the most skin tight outfit that you could ever imagine. So
what they did with Ivy,
right? No, but I think that this is definitely of the leaving a little bit to the imagination, and I feel like my reaction to this was always there was always a shot where you're just like,
right? Because I think we're talking about it probably like about 3-4 issues prior to this about that. I was like, wow, those are some weird angles for shots y'all chose to put in there. Like that's
it reminded me of the All-Star Batman series with Jim Lee doing the super cheesecake artwork for that.
For Black Canary.
And for Batgirl.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, they snuck a good bit in that. Frank Cho will be pretty pleased. So yeah, that was Heroes in Crisis. I don't know if anybody else got anything else to say about that, because it was if you didn't get what we thought about it from all of that, I don't know what to tell you. Well, that's right, because luckily I put this in my notes. So I mentioned prior to the show, like, okay, so do we because of what happened, like, do we have another extra Wally floating around? Is Roy still dead? Is everybody outside of like Ivy and them dead? And like, they never really explained that part, because they basically made it sound like, okay, well, everything's pretty much back the way it was, except for.
I mean, I'm gonna ring the spoiler bell because people out there may still be reading this.
Sure.
But I think a lot of those people, if not all of them, are dead. I think the one character they actually brought back was Ivy because of the whatchamacallit, because of what was explained in this issue. But I think all those people are dead, and that's why at least a version of Wally West is in jail right now. So.
Right, and that other one is looping. I don't know, but sure.
Running in circles, basically.
I guess, yeah, sure. But again, I feel like there's probably going to be an event like 2 years from now that was like, hey, remember when this happened? By the way, we're just going to take somebody out of the loop, and it's going to be like that scene in Endgame.
Yeah.
Or maybe it'll play in the Doomsday Clock.
Maybe. I was about to say it's like Doctor Strange and Dormammu.
Man, there's that too, but even that only went so far.
Right.
Anyway, but that is that. The Heroes in Crisis #9. It was the greatest book of the week.
Oh, yikes! Yikes!
Anyway, next up, I guess since we're on an event train. Oh, actually, we're not on an event train really, because the rest of that stuff was side stuff. Did you read? You didn't read War Scrolls, did you? Scrolls.
Speaking to me, no.
Yes, and I know Dirt didn't. So you know what? You guys go ahead and tackle Doomsday Clock.
All right.
This is great. I love this. This is the type of stuff I love in comics. So basically what we've been dealing with this whole time is this mixing between the Watchmen reality and our reality, and characters crossing over into I say our reality, into the DC universe.
Right, creating a connection.
Right. And so going into all the multiverse stuff, the parallel dimensions, whatever. And we know that Dr. Manhattan is in the DC Universe reality, that he's somehow done something, but you don't really know how it ties in, and they're trying to track him down and whatever. And we had a big attack from all the superheroes trying to stop him from doing his little experiments that involve the entire human race and all this kind of stuff. This is the issue where they finally explained everything. We've gotten the hints and pieces, and like I was saying, what we didn't get with Heroes in Crisis, we've been getting in Doomsday Clock. We've been getting little hints and snippets and visions of what's to come and whatever. And here, everything is finally laid out and explained, and you understand. And the big crux of this is what has been the crux of the DC universe since 1986 or 85, I guess, which is the multiverse and the crises right, that keep coming through there. So, like this is the stuff I love about the DC universe, is the multiverse and the different histories and all of that kind of stuff. And we had Dr. Manhattan. I guess if you want to ring the spoiler bell, because I'll talk about this a little bit.
You got it. Here it comes.
So Dr. Manhattan has been basically looking at the history of the DC universe, seeing as how it keeps changing with every big event, crisis.
Kind of seeing it from our eyes.
Yeah, how history keeps being rewritten, how the Justice Society is forming and they're waiting for Superman, and then suddenly there is no Superman. He comes 20 years later, and then suddenly something happens and he comes again 20 years later, and then again something happens and he's coming back. And so Dr. Manhattan has finally decided he's going to try his hand at playing with the DC universe, and he's the one who created the post-Flashpoint New 52. So he was the brain behind switching it. And he says there's something about the main DC universe. It's not just a multiverse, as we call it. He calls that universe the metaverse, because whatever happens in the main DC universe then splits out and causes all the different multiversal events to happen. There's something about Superman that's the key, and there's something about it being Superman in this timeline in the DC universe. And so the New 52 was his experiment to change up Superman and to try to make it a darker reality, because he was playing, because Superman has always been bright and positive and whatever, and he tried to make it darker and mess around. Can he really change him and whatever, which was a big point of contention with the New 52, how it did feel a lot darker in the DC universe and all of this stuff going on. So again, with him calling it the metaverse, it's again very meta for what's been happening with DC Comics and publishing and the different experiments of reworking some of these characters, which is why I think all of this kind of flows into what's happening with Tom King on Batman, because I'm pretty sure that when this series ends, we're going to see a big shift in the history and a big shift in the DC universe, and we're going to have a different, less dark, less emo DC universe going forward, right, which puts Tom King's Batman in this awkward spot. So I'm almost wondering if Tom King's new Batman and Catwoman project will continue this timeline in its own series, and he'll finish off his story as like an alternate Elseworlds thing, and the main DC universe at the end of Doomsday Clock is going to be something different and something that's more comic book and that we know of as kids, something that's more new reader friendly, something that's more of that classic comic style. So, but anyway, just the fact that they went through all this and they had Dr. Manhattan kind of explaining as he's looking at history and looking at these changes, and we know as readers that's from Crisis, and that's from what was it, 0 Hour and Final Crisis and Flashpoint, and all this stuff messing with history and messing with time and all these loops and rewrites and whatever. Reboots. It was just really nice to see how all of that worked together. So I enjoyed the heck out of this book,
because it is meta, I thought, because as much as I come at it from a slightly different perspective. I've said it multiple times on the show before, and that I'm a huge fan of the New Teen Titans pre-Crisis, and everything that came post-Crisis made absolutely no sense to me, and I never liked it, and I was like, I'm out. Peace. For those who consistently stayed with DC throughout these multiple we've called them reboots, but it's interesting to see.
You poor sad people.
Right, but it's interesting to see, to see Jeff Johns put this together as part of a continuity, and looking at it from the perspective of a meta perspective, ha ha ha, and putting it into the story. It was interesting to read, as Dr. Manhattan is almost like our proxy. Like we were reading it through him, and we're like, wait, we're actually observing it the same way over these past X number of years.
Well, and another thing is that Jeff Johns, this is really like his method of storytelling is I remember the first big thing reading was when he did the Green Lantern with Parallax, and instead of it just being how Jordan went crazy and became evil, it's like there was this corruption, and the corruption was actually Parallax, and he made this giant mythology out of it. Then he did the Flash Rebirth and brought back Barry Allen and figured out a way to take these little breadcrumbs from throughout the DC history and work it back together. And then back on Green Lantern, he started adding all the different colors of the spectrum and how those built into different things. And he's just really good at finding random threads and breadcrumbs and stories, and then weaving them together. Yeah. And so it's really nice because it also works. Like, it makes sense the way he does it. It's not someone coming in with a hammer and just being like, okay, well, now this has changed and now it's going to work this way. It really works the way he does it. He finds these holes and says, okay, I can use this blank space in order to fill in part of a story here and part of a story here, and then link them together. And it's really neat the way he does that. And that's what he's done with this book. Now, the one criticism really is that it's taken a while to get to this point where you're seeing this work together. And now that we have a better idea of what's going on, I actually do want to go back and read those first couple issues again, because there was some weird stuff, especially with the Justice Society, which were a big part of this issue, talking about the changes that they went through and then the changes that he personally did to them as part of the New 52, basically wiping them out of existence. So that part of the DC history was gone. And so now I want to go back and see some of that stuff, because at the time I was reading it, I was like, oh yeah, that's that guy who was an old golden age hero, whatever. But, I just kind of glossed and moved on. So now I want to go back and read those issues, because, okay, it's like now he's doing something with them. Right. He's going to rework them and he's got something in mind.
I think the toughest part of this series to date is, one, the lateness of all the the releases of the issues, the large gaps in between the issues. I don't know if this really needed to be, although there's still 2 more issues left. We don't know if this will actually finish in 2019. I've got money against it. But what I was going to say is, did this really need to be 12 issues? One, that's my first point. That's my first question. And 2, I actually wanted to mention, it was I don't want to say I laughed at this, but just getting back to what I was mentioning before about the different reboots that have revolved around Superman and how they've had to shift. We kind of joke about Marvel's sliding timeline, and how DC just blows everything up and decides to kill people at certain times. The page I pulled up is the page where we kind of review the different times in DC history where they have killed off the Kents, whether they stayed alive or not. And I'm like, oh my God, are they around now? I remember when this happened. So, I thought that was pretty amusing. But I guess my biggest qualm, other than the release schedule, is why this had to be 12 issues. Like, why do we have to see those marionette people? I guess they might still play a part in the next 2 issues.
Yeah, and again, that's kind of why I want to go back and read it, because I'm wondering if there's something I missed with those characters, because they do seem kind of random, just thrown in there for no reason. So maybe there's something, there's a thread, that dropped with them that maybe is getting ready to come back in one way or another. So I'm not sure. So yeah, exactly. But again, I think part of the reason why he wanted it to be 12 was just because of Watchmen. Watchmen was a 12.
I was going to say that. If you
Yeah.
didn't bring it up, I was actually going to say that he wanted it to match.
And you could tell, of course, by the way that they do the cover art with the name along the side and on the back. You know, they've done the clock with the blood and
Right, and the kind of decompressed storytelling, like in some issues.
Right. But this one, for being 10 issues, at this point, 10 issues along, I'm much more excited and still looking forward to 2 more issues, as opposed to Heroes in Crisis, where we got to like issue 4 and I was ready for it to be over, and you know we still had 5 more to go.
I wish we had. Well, we do have recordings, but we actually sometimes never talked about issues like 3, 4, 5, 6 of Doomsday Clock. We're just like, oh, this is awful. Can we tell me? There was a
we talked about it, the fact that it keeps getting pushed.
Right, there was a point, but there was a point where was it issue number 8? I think it was where Dirk came on and said, "All right, you don't have to have read anything before this. This is where you start." So that's kind of that's the advice I followed. So now I am, I'm current, and it feels like I didn't miss anything in issues 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7.
Yeah, and again, it may not. It may have just been some red herrings he threw in there to
tease you along,
right, to get you to go along with it. So that's always a possibility. But again, I like a lot of the stuff that Jeff Johns has done with a lot of these different characters over the years. He really dives into the history, and he really, like I said, grabs those dangling plot threads and those breadcrumbs of a storyline and figures out how to work them together into something new and different and exciting. So I'm really, if the last 2 issues aren't a complete letdown,
right,
then this is going to be one of my favorite stories in a long time.
I gotcha. And I definitely understand, why. I did appreciate the fact that we were almost reading it along, kind of over Dr. Manhattan's shoulder, like kind of experiencing it because he was living our experience.
Well, and I guess, part of it's also, I'm not a huge fan of the Watchmen and the Watchmen universe. So when it first started, it's like, okay, that's kind of interesting, but then it kept going with some of those characters and some of that stuff, and it's like, because I actually like the Charlton characters more than the Watchmen characters they were morphed into.
Right.
And so I always, every time I read Watchmen stuff or look at Watchmen stuff, I'm always like looking at the Squadron Supreme version of characters, not the characters I actually want to be reading, Right. So now that we've kind of moved through some of that stuff and it's more into history of the DC universe proper, I'm obviously much more excited for the story.
Gotcha. Right.
I was going to say, don't let Matt Wayne hear you say that about the Watchmen. Don't do it.
Well, that's a problem I have with a lot of Alan Moore stuff. It's like, I don't know. That's a whole conversation for another time.
This seems just to be an Alan Moore thing, period.
Yeah, Alan Moore he's really good at like taking this idea, this really good nugget of an idea, and starting to work it, and then just kind of losing interest, and then it just becomes a story with points to get to an end.
Gotcha. All right.
I was going to ask it, but that took longer than I actually expected it to be. I'm impressed. Are either of you reading Young Justice?
I've read here and there.
Because and the only reason why I bring it up is because you talked about the metaverse and stuff earlier, because they seem to be bringing up the fact about the crises, and they did not, while we're not specifically saying anything about the metaverse, they seem to be kind of touching on that stuff along with Doomsday Clock in a sense anyway. They're not really going full blown in it, but it's like, hey, stuff that happens on Earth kind of gets reverberated onto other places. So all of the crises kind of hurt other points of existence. So it's like, I'm like, okay, well, clearly that stuff's feeding into this stuff, or this stuff's feeding into that stuff.
Well, that's also kind of the DC universe.
Yeah,
bread and butter is the whole multiverse changing history, and Crisis on Infinite Earths was a big deal. It was a very big deal. It still reverberates.
Right, which you can find on DC Universe. Not a plug, just a fact.
You know what? I will admit I've never actually read Crisis all the way through.
I have not either, actually. I don't think, but I have read it.
Shame.
Before I take the Game of Thrones walk of shame, I'm going to remind everyone what year Crisis was released, how much it was cover price, and what we had to maybe forego in order to buy these copies. And I ended up reading it in trade, or like reading most of it in trade once the trades were released, especially when they redid it with the Alex Ross cover.
Mm.
During the mid 90s, if you guys remember that. So that's when I read it, but I can safely say I actually haven't read every single page. I think I skipped. I was like, all right, somebody's dying. All right, that's who the Anti-Monitor is. Okay, this makes no sense. Moving on.
And see, I was the kid that I had the I forget what company did it, but there was another comic company that did the official index to Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it was 2 issues, and it pointed out every character, it pointed out what Earth they were from, it pointed out how they changed throughout history, all of this stuff, and you could go page by page.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like a reference where you look at, like, here's the page in Crisis, and then you look in the index, and here's all the notes about all the characters that appear on the page.
It was basically that big board with the string and the thumbtacks.
Right, and I remember I was digging through all the boxes at the comic shops, everything that had the Crisis on Infinite Earths tie-in, and it's like, yep, buy that. Buy that.
All right. Well, it's pretty cool that we can actually speak about Doomsday Clock in relatively positive terms after many, many months.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I still got money on it not finishing in 2019.
I'll take that bet.
That'll be a gentleman's dollar bet, and we'll see if it finishes.
And we'll make it a slap bet
in 2019.
Oh no!
What's that? I haven't been on the playground in a long time. What's that?
The slap bet is if you lose, the other person gets to slap you across the face as hard as they can.
That's terrible. I'd rather.
And they can do it anytime they want to, so you'll never see it coming.
Yeah, it's a dollar bet. All right.
Moving
on.
What's next?
Yes. So, I guess to round out our event stuff, we can go ahead and get some of this stuff out of the way. You, Agent 70, read World of Realms, Spider-Man League, and the League of Realms.
I did. It was a very pleasant issue to read, and I don't mean that lightly. This miniseries follows Spidey leading what's left of the League of Realms into a mission to take on the Angels, who have basically conquered the majority of the African continent. And Spidey has done his best to convert one of the Angels who has been a dissenter in the ranks. The leader of the Angels sided with Malekith and basically alienated this one particular character, and Spidey, through diplomacy, was able to convince this character to switch sides, and that's the crux of the story. It's really not the best, shoot 'em up action comic. It actually has a lot of heart to it, so I really appreciate that this series has that in it. When we kind of look at some of the other War of the Realms tie-in books.
This brings about a curiosity because, as we know, Spidey, well, obviously this is I don't want to say ploy, but that's probably the best word I have right now, to get Spidey in a War of the Realms book of his own, quote unquote, and not have it be in his what's going on in his books. Which I guess it works out. Like I didn't read this issue just yet, but the reason why I bring that up is because we also know that he was or is or at some point will be in Jotunheim with Cap and the rest of that team, which had me thinking like, okay, when does this happen?
This happens after he's already come back from that mission. But
after that, that's when. So, which means it was before Avengers Mountain got attacked. Because after they came back, Avengers Mountain got attacked, and everybody or
right, he's already off. Right, he's off. He's away while the mountain's being attacked.
Okay, so it didn't make it seem that way but I guess that makes sense. Okay, you're off the hook on that one.
I'm like, I don't know why I was on the hook in the first place, but okay.
Because like we said last week, there's some of these books was like, okay, the timing of these things are kind of weird as to when this stuff is happening. Like, yeah, you see the hooks, but at the same time, there are a couple of issues and a couple of books are like, okay, I don't when this is how is this happening? When is this happening? Kind of situation.
Right.
But, yeah. But speaking of, if you're done with that,
yeah.
Water Realms War Scrolls #2 I'll talk about real quick. So really the final points of these are, and we'll get to Thor next.
Sure.
You read that one. But wait, you read Fantasy 4 also, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay, good.
That was a great issue, by the way. We're going.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Water Realms War Scrolls #2 basically is 3 little short stories. The one main story has to do with God-powered Daredevil. So after the events of last issue where the Kingpin gets kidnapped by Malekith, gets slapped around in this issue a little bit by Malekith, and of course Kingpin, being the person he is, uses the situation to his advantage because Malekith wants information on Daredevil, and of course Wilson Fisk said, I'll do you one better, I'll kill him myself. But he's the Kingpin, so he's going to be playing both sides against the middle, so to speak. Actually, he doesn't, because actually he gets a sledgehammer and goes to fight Daredevil, but then ends up turning it into his advantage media-wise, as politicians seem to do. So outside of that part was a pretty decent one. And then the other 2 stories are like, well, there's a Doctor Strange story, like right after he does the spell that sends everybody to Avengers Mountain, and pretty much what he does in between that time. And that one was okay. It's like, okay, well, that wraps up his little thing on that. And the last story is well, basically, one, we find out why Loki wears horns, and it has to do with Odin, which will take us into, which doesn't have anything to do with Thor 13, but it comes up there anyway. And he goes to Wiccan for not necessarily some advice, but he's trying to recruit him, or trying to recruit his future self as the Demiurge, when things pop off. And of course, this one is leading into what happens to him at the end of Water Realms #1. Because, he and Wiccan have a little conversation at a drag brunch. And Wiccan kind of lays into him a little bit, because obviously they have history of being in the young ventures together. And then it kind of goes off. And then War of the Realm 1 happens, where Loki gets eaten. And, a little sad little note there, but it, obviously we know that didn't stick. So that's pretty much that. So the I don't know how many other more issues in it, but like I said, the main story of this is the Daredevil stuff, and then they'll just have a couple other side stuff to it. You can pass it unless you like Daredevil and want to read what's going on with him and that part as a side of what the other stuff he's been doing. So now we can get to Thor #13.
All right. So Thor #13, the story is entitled, is it The Ballad of...
Yeah, The Ballad of...
Kull Borson? Yeah, the Ballad of Kull Borson, God of Fear.
And boy, is it.
Yeah, it's this is actually a well-done character study of a character who, until this point, we knew very little about. He was, and speaking as someone who generally has read the last several volumes of the Thor books, including prior to Kull being introduced into the line of books, we never really knew much about him other than, that he was the god of fear. He wanted to take the throne of Asgard, and that's why fear itself happened.
I was going to ask that. Okay, good.
So that's really the gist. That was the gist of the character up until very recently. the character was reintroduced into the story by Jason Aaron in the wake of Jane Foster becoming Thor, and has kind of sculpted and worked in the background for a couple of years now. But in this issue, really comes to the forefront, and this is a really well done redemption tale. This is very much in the spirit of Scourge the Executioner and Scourge's Last Stand from the Simonson run. I thought that The Last Stand was going to what was actually reflected in Freya's story, because Freya in some of the other War of the Realms books is defending a bridge, which is what Scourge was doing back in that issue of Thor from Simonson's run when he was killed by the forces of Hell. So this is definitely reminiscent of that. This is a redemption story for Cull, and it really was a good story. This is a good one and done story. This did not need to be stretched out over 2 issues. I'm glad it wasn't. I'm glad that this was done in this one issue.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's been a couple of stories like that, I guess. Yeah, well, in War of the Realms, there's little character books, or actually not even them. I think what I'm thinking of is the Amazing Spider-Man stuff, which we'll probably get to in a little bit, because there's a couple of like little one and done story that actually tie into the story at some point.
The .hu books.
Yes, exactly. And this one is not that much different, from that, whereas you can see, okay, there's more to this character than we knew already, and kind of almost make you feel for him a little bit. So.
Right, and what's great in this story is that Cull acknowledges all of the mistakes that he's made, and realizes that there are he actually says it in the story that it's taking him far too long to actually live and find some heart and a reason to live, but at least he found it right before going out. And what's distressing is that these gods of Asgard, someone who is literally on the level of Odin minus the Odin power, right, gets taken down by all these dark elves, and you realize that these dark elves are not messing around. Their power level has been, and their weapon level has been jacked up enormously for this story.
Right. And I was about to say that it's kind of interesting because I feel like Cole could have gone through. Well, Cole went through an arc that Loki probably could have gone through, or might have at one point. But But that said, with that aside, Cole pretty much did to Odin what Fury did to Thor in Original Sin.
Oh, with the whispering, yes.
Mm-hmm. I was like, huh, that's interesting.
Right.
So, but
and
yeah,
I was about to say, and as always, when it comes to Asgardians, the ones who die often are revisited in the depths of hell, especially when hell is in charge. So. We'll see what happens, in the future with the character. But this was a really great one and done story.
Yep. So now we can move on to which, by the way, if we hadn't figured that out, we're in the War of the Realms territory with all of these next couple of books.
Okay.
That one, Fantastic Four number 10, which I think that might be it for that.
In terms of the books I read, I think.
Well, because I know Immortal Hulk kind of mentions it, but it doesn't hit it.
No, not at all.
Yeah, but yeah, Fantastic Four number 10, which is out of the books that I've read. Also, this pretty much ends the tie-in books that we've read anyway. Because I know there was another one. Yeah,
right.
So Fantastic Four number 10. The team's back on Yancey Street. They're basically, it's some little downtime. Teens are being teens, and oh, by the way, you did some stuff while we were away, so now the punishment is being dealt out.
Right, and I'm glad they never glossed over that this is a direct follow-up to the events of recent issues.
Mm-hmm. We get a cameo, well, actually not just a cameo appearance by Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, which I thought was a cameo going into it. It was like, oh look, they just happened to pop up because obviously they're on Yancey Street while all this stuff comes up. And then Block Party happens. Franklin just out of nowhere, because that tends to happen. And of course,
that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. But before that, I think that was
old school. I was gonna say that is old school New York right there. You don't see that all that often. You see it once in a while, but
right.
I have to say that this was something that has not yet been addressed. We're 10 issues in, and I think the FF, because of the events of in Latveria and Ben's wedding, we really have not seen. And this is the perfect time to do it. The effects of the FF relocating to Yancey Street, and this was a great issue in which we got to see how the neighborhood was maladjusting to their new neighbors.
Right. Which, spoiler alert, Yancey Street is still Yancey Street.
Right.
But yeah, like I said, there were the teens being the team, and Franklin being a little rebellious, and then meeting up with as his sentence is being dealt with, he's going through some things himself and meeting the Yancey Street people and him trying to figure out his thing. And then of course the Block Party, like I said, and of course War of the Realms rolls up on the doorstep, so they get into the fight. That pretty much says, well, gets them to now, I'm assuming going to be in the main book at some point, probably next issue, now that they're in the fight. They wouldn't just leave them to their own book. But we also, at the end of this issue, get, I guess, another street level team of FF. Some would say the Future Foundation.
Right, that might what I was gonna
attacking the block.
Right, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think this might be the ground level of the Future Foundation.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Because the beginning of the issue is a reference to where the majority of the former Future Foundation is right now. They're all in space. Right. And that's clearly referenced and is a story point in the issue. At the end of the issue, we finish with a little bit of a splash of the two Richards children teamed up with Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur to hold down Yancey Street against the forces of Malekith. So,
right, much like Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur did with Ben and Johnny,
right,
for everything, in her book a while back before the rest of the FF came back.
Right. So this is definitely I think this might be the start of. I don't know if they're going to have Lunella join the Future Foundation, but they're probably going to be working together.
Right.
Tying in maybe.
Possibly. Yeah. I mean, I feel like at this point that's probably something they may. I'm a few issues behind in her book. They'll probably mention some of that there.
Right.
Anything, and yeah, if she does happen to be in that Future Foundation book, then probably an appearance, not necessarily joining. So, but this was a pretty good issue, and like I said, as a tie-in issue, it was, that was a misspelling. Hey, it didn't get too crazy with it. So that being the case, we will move on to. I think we may have like one more book, and let's flip back, because I know you got both guys did this one. Superman Leviathan Rising.
Okay.
Apparently, Matt Wang has a lot of interest in this, according to Twitter.
Yes, he did get at us on this and asked if we were reading this, and I think we had all chimed in on it at one point or another.
we'd at least look at it. That's what I mean. I think that's generally our attitude for a lot of this stuff. We are reviewing them after all.
So here we go.
I had talked recently about the Superman books and how the Superman books were apparently leading into this Leviathan storyline. And I thought it was kind of weird that it was going to go into this event and like all the Superman stuff was going to lead into this event. And it not be a regular part of the Superman series. I thought was weird. And I also thought it was weird because Leviathan was Talia al Ghul's group and she hadn't been part of the story. Well, lo and behold, we get this special and we find Talia al Ghul is a part of this. They did manage to bring her in.
But isn't. That's the spoiler. I'll ring the spoiler bell. Hold on.
But she is a part of Leviathan, and that's been a big part of what's been going on in the Silencer miniseries. Or actually, it's not a miniseries; it's a series, but I think it's going to end. But anyway, so Leviathan, we've got this group, this like criminal underworld group, and it has gotten involved in everything from like the Cobra cult to the DEO, which is was the Department of is it extraterrestrial?
Something like that, yeah.
Something, yeah. Anyway, so it's like from these government groups to even like the villainous cults, whatever. Leviathan has been weaving in and out of all this stuff, and the story that we got basically was they kidnap Clark Kent to try to get to Superman, which you would think, well, obviously Superman's just going to attack, except they put kryptonite on Clark Kent so that when Superman comes, it'll make Superman weak. And that, of course, makes Clark Kent weak. And thus we have our conundrum going on here. But this was one of these stories where there was a bunch of stuff that had been going on in Action Comics and some things in Superman comics, and they wove those together into this. We got some of the stuff, like I said, with Talia al Ghul and some of that stuff going on. It looks like they're bringing that stuff in that we've been seeing happening in some of the other books. And then right in the middle, we get this weird 5-page Jimmy Olsen story, which is like a throwback to the old Jimmy Olsen 50s and 60s crazy stories. And this one, oddly enough, involves the Red Lantern cat that vomits blood on people. So if anybody remembers reading the Red Lantern series, you get a throwback to that. So it's just like this weird mix of these.
I would say if you watch The Hangover, it's basically like a very compact version of The Hangover.
But not.
Or if you played Injustice 2, where that cat actually is in there.
But I was going to say, not just is that story weird, but the fact that story's in this mix and the mix of everything in this special is kind of weird. Because this is a special before the miniseries kicks off. So this is the special for people who haven't been reading a lot of the Superman stuff, don't really know what's going on. You can read this and kind of get caught up on some of that stuff without having to go too deep into reading that stuff. So it was a weird way to bring all this stuff in. And we saw there was actually there was a scene with Superman, and I think his name is Mr. Bones, who's basically a skeleton, but he works for the DEO. And there was a conversation between the two of them in the comic. And then this shows two people standing nearby while that conversation was going on, having a different conversation in the back, and with Supergirl involved and all this stuff. So again, it's just one of these weird, it's almost like a sampler of the DC universe, but tried instead to be put together into one coherent special of all these different characters coming about. And it was, like I said, it was weird, but it was really entertaining. I mean, even if you don't really know 100% what's going on, at least it was interesting. And we see more. One of the things I was complaining about with this Leviathan guy who's coming in to take over the Leviathan group is that we don't really know anything about him. He's just been kind of hinted at here and there in a couple of comics. So this put much more of a spotlight on him. So we see him a little bit more. He talks more. We see his personality more. So we do know a little bit more about him as we go into the event, which I think is something they really needed to do. I was lamenting that a lot last week. So I'm glad to see that they've done something with that. But I'm still just kind of at this weird spot where I'm trying to figure out what exactly is this story going to be about, other than a villain in charge of a villainous, how is this not just Cobra Commander and Cobra taking over and fighting the Joes? Like, there's got to be something more to it other than the fact that he probably has some sort of superpower.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to figure out what exactly that hook is going to be, but I'm much more ready for the event now after the special than I was last week when I got to the end of action and it was just like, to be continued in the Leviathan event.
Is this tying in with Supergirl?
I haven't read Supergirl in a while because they switched with a different writer, and it's not, I forget who it is, but I remember seeing that writer on it and being like, meh. So I have no idea what's going on in Supergirl.
I bring that up, right? I bring that up because
well, I do know in the comic, in the New 52, when they redid it the first time, yes, Kara was living with those two people as her surrogate parents, as her cover story.
Right.
Right,
and what PCN_Dirt is referencing is Supergirl's appearance in this book and a strike against her surrogate family. So that's where Supergirl appears, and it seemed like they were going after all people with the the House of L.
Well, they've actually been going after everybody. Like I said, they've been going after the super powered, like the Suicide Squad and Amanda Waller's group, and Task Force X is actually what it's called. But all of those groups have also been attacked. And when you see in this special, you see this big hulking character walks up to the house where Supergirl's parents are and explodes. And that is something that's been happening in the Superman comics that they were showing with some of this different stuff.
Okay.
You don't know what these things are. You don't know where they come from. You don't know, is this like a guy whose superpower is he explodes?
Right.
And then, he just reconstitutes himself and goes on to the next one? Or are these like terrorists that they've trained to go out and suicide bomb, or what? You don't know what's going on with these things, but that has been an ongoing thing.
Okay.
This big hulking figure walks into a room and explodes and destroys a headquarters or someone that the government's been trying to protect, or tries to kill Amanda Waller or whatever.
Okay.
By the way, the Department of Extra Normal Operations.
Extra normal.
Thank you.
So that would save a message
But
or two.
I have to admit, I read the Red Lantern series when it was out, and at first I didn't realize that was supposed to be the same cat. So the cat like pukes up blood, and I'm like, whoa, like what the hell? Like why is this a thing?
Right.
And then it pukes up more blood, and then it pukes up more, and then it just like coats the entire room in blood, and I'm like, oh right, okay, that's the Red Lantern.
Right, and here I am thinking, what the hell is going on? So I'm flipping past, like, oh, this makes no sense. Moving on.
So it actually does make sense in a way. So
Right.
Go figure. But yeah, it's like I said, I'm a lot more enthusiastic about the event now that they put out this
Still
special.
doesn't. Yeah, it's about to say, it still doesn't explain why that comes into the middle of this. But I guess, like we said earlier, like maybe that has something to do with his book coming. Jimmy Olsen's book that's coming. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm guessing they want to give you a flavor of what his series is going to be like, but then I'm also guessing that his wife,
Right.
whose last name he apparently took, she'll somehow come back into play in all of this. So they want to do something with her to show her being in there. So yeah, like I said, it was interesting. It was a lot of fun.
Cool. Maybe one more, and then we rapid fire this puppy.
Alrighty.
Mortal Hulk, number 18.
Sure.
So this book continues to be full of references to the Hulk universe, and there was a what I believe to be a right parallel between this and the Kaiju universe. That was mentioned in the book, because I didn't think about it, because I think there was a reference to like Kaiju in this issue, and I'm like, you know what, the Hulk verse kind of is, because there's like different kinds of Hulks, and like there are different kind of Kaiju, and that kind of plays. But in this one, we see Bruce kind of quote unquote waking up after Joe Fixit, kind of has this turn with him, and Joe set him up somewhere, kind of fixes him up and set him off on a mission. And Bruce kind of goes off to, I guess, the second place you would find a Joe Fixit type character as a play on something. But he's also being followed by another long-standing Hulk villain, to which halfway through the inevitable fight happens. But before then, we find out that Betty Ross is not only still alive, but she has reverted into, I guess, a new version of a Hulk form of hers.
Right. It's a combined version.
Right. So, like I said, this book continues to just like play on the Hulk lore, and there are references galore because they've brought up like 2 or 3 different people, including who shows up at the end of or who we find out a character is at the end of this book. But at the same time, you have people like the Absorber Man and Titania working for Gamma Flight, and making a reference to between like Doc Simpson and Titania, because apparently there's history there, which I couldn't find out anything about because I was like, well, I don't know what that's about. But
yeah, that was a little different. I bumped on that too because I wasn't 100% sure where or when that happened.
Right, because at first I thought they were talking about Betty, but I was like, that can't be right.
All right, so a couple things. One, Joe Bennett's art on this is sufficiently creepy.
Yes,
the way he's done, the way he's portrayed a lot of these characters that we're very familiar with, in very creepy is the only way I can describe it, in a very creepy manner.
Into a Franco video type thing, except for less orange.
Right, and obviously, speaking of my enhanced appreciation for digital coloring, Paul Mounts, a longtime Marvel colorist, does a bang up job on this, and he may have done several of the previous issues on the series. There's definitely a lot of great mood lighting as well, in this very much horror infused and story. It's very much a horror infused story, much more so than your regular superhero fare. So there's a reason why this comic has struck a chord with a lot of readers, because it's not your standard superhero story, and it definitely gives you the creeps.
Yeah, or can if
right.
You're susceptible to that.
Well, don't fret and say the Abomination redesign, the facial redesign, didn't creep you out just a little bit. It's very
it was definitely weird.
It's very Stranger Things influence.
And Aliens, I would have said, because
yes, that was my second one.
Yeah, it's like it looks like a face hugger now. What's going on here?
Right.
But yeah, like I said, where comes the Abomination comes a big fight between he and the Hulk. But what we don't know during the course of this fight is which the Hulk tends to mention. He was like, well, is it Blonsky or is it somebody else they got? And which was a key telling, that Hulk is kind of up on things, because it's like, well, he's very observant.
Right.
As of late. Oh, and there was also another part where Banner and the Hulk was kind of chopping it up about that whole end of the world plan, which got brought up during the Avengers thing.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently that is still in play, and Banner's on board with that or something. That's what I guess that's what you make out of that. But you also see him kind of, sketching out the different forms, the Hulk and personality forms that have shown up so far. So, and I'm sure that's and including ones that are missing, including one that struck me as interesting, But I know that's been a thing in the comics, but also just something that was in game. So that was kind of interesting. The only other thing I'm kind of curious about is like, well, out of everybody that's shown up, and I know like She-Hulk has shown up with the Avengers in past issues, and I'm sitting here like, clearly there's got to be a turn where she comes back in, and they kind of hash that out in Amadeus Cho as well. Them being also prominent figures in Hulk canon now, anyway.
Right.
Or at least as far as Amadeus is now, but obviously She-Hulk's been there for a while. So I'm kind of curious as to when they're going to show up in this. But outside of that, hey, this is still another pretty great issue with some twists.
This is drawing people in. You know, people are picking up the trades. It's definitely worth catching up on.
Right. And the last thing I'll say is like there is a missing person that ends up coming back, who's also tied very deeply to the Hulk lore.
Yeah.
With this issue. So,
alrighty,
check that out. I believe unless somebody else has got something else, we can go rapid fire.
No, I'll spin it up. Dirt, are you all right?
Okay, hit it.
All right. Maybe I'll go first. I think I've got the most books left.
Yeah, and you and I still have a book together, but let's handle that.
Alrighty. Batman: Last Night on Earth, #1. This is the reunion of Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo on Batman, and it's a story about. It's actually, for adults because there's some language in the book, but it's a story about a possible future and some of the mechanisms that Batman has put into place. It's very reminiscent of Batman Beyond, a story point in Batman Beyond. I'll leave it at that. It's definitely worth looking at. It's part of the DC Black Label imprint, and it's definitely an interesting read. This is the first issue. I'm not 100% sure how many issues have been solicited as being part of this this publication, but there is to be continued at the end of this issue. Amazing Spider-Man #22. This is the final issue. I don't know if you read this, Roddy.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the last issue that we have in common. So this is Hunted, the storyline, part 6. And this is the culmination of the sequel to Kraven's Last Hunt. And the way it plays out, I felt like we were not going to get a satisfying ending until we got one.
Right. I felt like this. Well, I mean, I'm guessing that's what that next book is going to be, because this felt a little too tidy in spots.
When you say the next book, what are you referring to?
The issue after this with the conclusion.
Oh, the kind of like an aftermath. I got you.
Right. And even still, just like, well, if that's the conclusion and what happens here, like there seems like things were tied up in this, but there's also a couple of loose strings.
Sure.
Which if it doesn't come out in the next issue, will probably come up at some point.
Right. So, but ultimately, we get the finale. The majority of the main story that we've been following through these last few months in Amazing is tied up. And as I mentioned, I wasn't sure we were going to get a good ending until we actually got it. So I thought that Spencer did a great job of messing with us and subverting our expectations until a small twist led to a kind of a satisfying ending to a sequel to what, in my opinion, was always one of the best Spidey stories I read growing up. And obviously, it's proven to be very popular for a lot of people as well. So, I definitely enjoyed the execution of the story.
There, outside of for me, it kind of felt like, yeah, it was good, but it was like this seems a little too tidy in spots. And again, like I said, because of the way one part of the ending kind of came about, it was like, okay, this clearly can't be the end of that.
Honestly, the biggest downside in this series has been Ramos's art. I don't think it's dramatic enough. I don't think it's realistic enough. It doesn't carry the same weight that Mike Zeck's art did in the first series. That's one of the reasons why that series has stood the test of time. Through Spidey reboots and whatever, people still keep going back to it. So that's that. Daredevil number 6. So this is the continuation of the aftermath of Daredevil kind of hanging it up for a little while, and we get to see all the ramifications of that and side effects that happen in Hell's Kitchen, and the police precinct that patrols Hell's Kitchen, and Detective Cole North, who was basically Mr. Anti-superhero, anti-vigilante, and we're getting to see a little bit of a comeuppance for him in this issue. We've started to see it in previous issues, but it's really come to the forefront in this issue. So we did Doomsday Clock, FF, Immortal Hulk, Magnificent Miss Marvel number 3. You didn't read that this week?
I did.
Okay, so that's another book that we had in common. We could just discuss this very quickly. This is the follow-up to the reveal that Kamala is being tested, and she is somebody's only hope. And eventually Kamala and her parents are transported off-world to a place where things are not as they seem.
Right, well, that's how it happened faster than I expected it to.
Well, right, definitely. But I'm kind of glad it did, because I think the crux of the story isn't with that, but with the what did her mother say to describe him? It was a great line.
The shirtless
muscular man or something. Yeah, that was a great that was worth the price of admission right there, folks. So
yeah, the whole thing was done in her. She was the one that was narrating this. So I was like, okay.
No, it was the mother and the father.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I must have missed that part.
I think so. I'm not. The way I read it was that it was the mother and the father.
Okay, I just read that it was just the mother.
It was the mother and the father kind of going back and forth, depending on who was the focus of the particular panel.
Sure.
That's how I interpreted it. So that's who was that's who the focus of the thought balloons were. So that was a great. I really enjoyed this book, but that particular panel, it's the next to last page, was worth the price of admission right there. Yep. Let's see. So we did Thor, War of the Realms, Heroes in Crisis, and Black Panther number 12. Did you read that too?
I also read that, yes.
Alrighty. So Black Panther. So we're running through a lot of your rapid fire as well. Black Panther number 12. I've expressed my frustration with the story. I know that Roddy Cat has counseled to just kind of stick with it. I think I don't give it enough time. I don't give enough time to reading it, and that's really the biggest problem with this series thus far, since the relaunch and the Intergalactic Empire of Wakanda story started. There's stuff at the beginning in the notes in the intro page that you have to read to remind yourself of what's going on, and there are end notes at the end of the book that are pretty much necessary reading, and if you do not read those, you will lose a lot of the context of what you've just read. So,
and although I keep feeling like they're missing one, because and maybe I need to read back into this one of those ones, but those are good reads to definitely kind of get you up to speed with,
as well as the maps that Coates and his fellow co-creators have put together to give you an understanding of the depth of the corner of the universe in which the Empire of Wakanda exists. So
the part where he actually sent the initial group out into space, did actually show up in a comic in a Black Panther comic. I just can't remember where, and I want to say it was like either before an event happened or a roundabout.
I want to say that was in. I want to say that was in that one shot. The whatchamacallit, that the giant size book. I forget what it was. I forget the title of it, but I remember seeing that. That was in. I believe it was in that one shot issue. I just don't recall the title.
Wait, you talking about for Black Panther, or you talking about for not Marvel Legacy?
Was that what the title of it was?
No, because I went back and read through Marvel Legacy. I'm like, well, that basically alluded to stuff that was in here already, or in the thing. But yeah, but like you, I do remember there was something. I just don't remember where it is. I'm not sure if those books in the back are the ones that I'm thinking about. It's a small point, but it was just one that was like kind of stuck with me through this whole thing.
All right, I'm done.
All right, Dirk, you want to do yours?
Yeah. So my last one is something that kind of came out of nowhere, but this from Source Point Press. It's called Sham Comics, and this is I don't know if you want to call it a remix. They took public domain Golden Age comics and they reworded them and redid special effect balloons. They put all new ads in them that are all bad puns or off-color jokes or whatever. And this whole thing is just a joke from beginning to end using public domain Golden Age comics. And in fact, it's even printed Golden Age size. So your regular bags and boards will not fit this comic. It is bigger.
Bigger even than the Silver Age comic bags and boards that are it's bigger than your regular comics, so you have to have special bags and boards for it. But this was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to look through. There's different things in here like lingerie lass. There's an ad and it says fighting crime in her undies. Get yours today before the Comics Code puts an end to her adventures. Oh no!
And it just has like this little ad at the bottom of the page for one of those old comics. There's a thing on the back that comic books are the enemies of the youth, and it talks about how some guy sold drugs just so he could get the money to buy comics. Just like fun, dumb, stupid stuff. It's different writers going through and redoing them. So some are a little bit better than others. And some of the source material that they work with is a little easier to reword the stuff than some of the other stories. But it's neat to go through and see. Some of them are even printed on, I don't know if this is going to show up at all, but the page background is actually yellow on some of these. So it looks like the old pages. Okay. Whereas some of them are on bright white pages. So they actually look like they came from different comics, merged together. In here. So it's just kind of a neat, fun, dumb thing that they did. I like seeing the old Golden Age stuff, but it's just kind of funny to see how they went through. And like there's this one character, the Red Roid and Pooter. And Pooter is his little sidekick, and he just farts. Like every time you see the sidekick, he just farts. So,
I don't have that sound effect, ladies and gentlemen.
But this is originally published in WoW Comics 64, 1948.
Wow.
And they even have the credits. They track down the original writers and the artists. Originally published in Smash Comics 32, March 1942. So it's just kind of, again, this is a, it's a nothing. It's just a fun little gag thing to have laying around, but it's neat. I love the look of that classic, 40s comic. Everything was Action Comics or Adventure Comics or Jungle Comics, and this is Sham Comics, and it's just fun to go through and just see new stories using the same old Golden Age public domain stuff that's already out there. So it's a neat idea, and I give him kudos for that.
Got it. All righty.
Kudos.
Or poodles.
So moving right along, I only have one more book, and that is Transformers #6. And in my notes, I basically said that there are times reading this book where I'm wonder where in the world in time that it is being placed, because it seems like it is before the stuff that we know, like well before the stuff that we know, and possibly well before the stuff that was in the last few volumes of Transformers books. But then I don't know, there's like 1 or 2 pages in here that just kind of make me think, I was like, wait, maybe this is afterwards? Because they keep mentioning it was like, yeah, after the war. I was like, okay, well, I know about a war. I'm like, and granted, that's not saying that a war could not have happened well before, the one we all know about, but I don't know, it seems kind of strange. But then there's also some things that's like, well, clearly this is well before that, and when when Orion Pax and Megatron were quote unquote young, because in this issue, Orion Pax goes to see somebody and then takes a trip down memory lane where he and before he and Megatron kind of had a rift between them. And matter of fact, I'm not saying it's the event that causes, because it's basically them getting to it's a memory where they're kind of differing in their opinions, or they were already pretty much differing in their opinions, and the people they're following and want them to go down one path, but they want to, kind of do their thing. Megatron kind of takes Orion Pax and on a little mischief mission, or Orion is a little along for a little mischief mission, that I assume is going to go somewhere at some point. I don't know, or that was just a one-off of like, hey, this happened, and from here on they just kind of split in their ways. But yeah, like I said, the time frame of this is still not very much clear, but so far it's still, a pretty decent read, especially if you're getting in on the ground floor of this, I guess. Because at part of this, you seem like, okay, you would think I would need to know about some of the past stuff that in the comic books, but it doesn't seem like it. And that, folks, is that. And we're now doing the clicks of the week.
Clicks of the week.
And we already have one from Tim Dog 98, and that is Amazing Spider-Man number 22.
Ah, that's a good choice. It's a good choice. There's a nice couple of story beats in there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anybody else?
Well, mine is I'm going to go with Heroes in Crisis. No, I'm not.
I was about to say, what? That would have been the time we needed the record scratch.
Yeah, right?
Jazz music stops. Huh?
Right.
There you go. But no, I am going to go with Doomsday Clock because I love the metaverse.
You were pretty well on top of that one, so yeah.
That's a good choice too. All right. I read a lot this week. I've got a lot to consider, so
yeah, same. Okay, that version, great. Shout out to Alex Trebek and whatever's going on with this game.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's why I was playing it. I was willing to let it play. I'm kind of stuck because I really did read. It's funny that Tim Dog 98 was contacting us, and while it was kind of a light week in terms of books, it wasn't light in terms of what I was reading. A lot of what I read actually was released this week, due to the holidays. So I had plenty to read this week.
There was still a couple of them I didn't even get around to.
Right, and throw in some of the DC books that I wanted to get to. Kind of gave me the impetus to get through a lot this week. I really enjoyed a lot. What was that?
Dog Days of Summer.
Right. Man. I'm tempted to go with Doomsday Clock number 10 as well, but yeah, I get the thumbs up from PCN.
Double thumbs up on that one, yeah.
Because I did enjoy as we elaborated on during our conversation. Like I enjoyed some of the panels. Like, look at how many times they've killed off the Kents. You know what? I think I'm going to go with that. Doomsday Clock number 10. Even though, shout out to Immortal Hulk number 18 and definitely Thor number 13 as well.
Yeah, Immortal Hulk definitely. I'm thinking I might actually go with Black Panther number 12 because we are finally starting to get turn the corner on this. I know we've probably said that a couple of different times in the past, but this is the definite turning point,
right?
And him starting to get back to Earth, and the pieces are getting back into place for that. So there we go.
Alrighty, yay!
And I guess, hey, Dirt, did you get anything from Matt?
What do you mean?
Did he send you anything?
No.
Never mind. I guess not. Okay.
oh, did he send out boxes again?
Yeah,
he's cleaning.
He's cleaning.
No, I missed out this. I guess I wasn't on the show that week, so I didn't get to put in my request.
You want to do an unboxing right now, real quick?
Yeah, really quick. I don't know if you want to stick around for that or no.
I can hang out for a minute.
So here is what the hell? What Matt sent me. This is a book called Voyage to the Deep. It is an IDW book, apparently. This is a remake. So in the early 1960s, Dell's Comics inspired by the success of the hit movie Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and they recruited legendary comics artist Sam Glanzman, himself a Native veteran. So I'm just opening this up, and this looks like Cthulhu, by the way. So I don't know.
Right.
Yes, as you can see, this is a hardback book, and I'm guessing these are reprints. If not, it's damn good.
Yeah, it definitely looks like an old comic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool.
So there's that, and there's also, I feel like there's a definite theme going on here. I don't know why. Midway, from the pages of Combat, that's something I keep seeing on Comixology, those Combat books. Also, Sam Glanzman. So again, there's a I don't know what Matt was.
This is the corner of the office dedicated to historical wars, apparently.
Clearly,
because I got some of that stuff too. I don't have ready access to it.
Right.
It's downstairs, but
gotcha. And actually, he must have sent. Oh wait, hold on. Did he send 2 copies of that? Oh no. Okay, because there's another one called Dunkirk.
There, that
in the pages of Combat. So again, Sam Glanzman. And let's see. In a book called Destiny in Y.
Alrighty.
Says set in a version of New York City where magic is real and accepted part of life. Logan McBride struggles to find purpose. Okay, he must know I like magic books, because sounds kind of sort of like up my alley. At the top it says adulting is hard. Adulting when you used to be a magical girl is way, way harder. Now that part I wouldn't know anything about. So
alrighty.
But you know what? Hey, respect it. And last but not least, we have a little poster from The Princess Who Saved Herself.
Yes.
I've heard about this.
From Greg Pak.
Right.
And Takeshi Miyazawa.
Yep. So that's always cool. So actually, I don't know. I feel like I should check that book out. But that's it. That's what I got.
Yay! I got very similar stuff from at Matt Wang 97. So thank you for the gift packages.
Yes. If you're ever cleaning out your office and you come across, I don't know, $1,000 to maybe $3,000, you wanna pick up for it, I will gladly take it. I will take one for the team. That's all I'm going to say. But unless anybody else got something to show, then we will go into the ad reads. But I guess
we can bid PCN_Dirt a good night.
Yes, thanks for having me. I'm gonna go pass out now.
All right. Take it easy, Dirt. We'll see you next week.
Talk to you guys later.
Later.
All righty. Our first ad read of the night is for Wink, the personalized wine club. Wink is a world of wine delivered right to your door. From rosé to Cabernet to Torronté, Wink has over 100 styles of wine to discover. Ever try an orange wine? Wink connects you to a world of exclusive wines tailored to your tastes and delivered directly to your door. Wink delivers 4 bottles of wine to you every month with free shipping. You can pick your own bottles or let Wink choose and match to your taste. It doesn't cost a thing to become a member, and you can skip or cancel anytime. And now the listeners of the Comic Book Chronicles can enjoy an exclusive discount of $20 off your first order. To place your first order with $20 off and to help keep our show free for you, go to our network website at cspn.us/wink. That's cspn.us/WINC. Wink Wines through cspn.us. Do it today. And now we roll into the news.
And as we start off, as we do every week, with the cinematic news, and we start off with the little Star Wars news. Within that, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic adaptation lands screenwriter, according to Newsarama's report.
Big step.
Yep, definitely so. And let me see, just to say who it is. Yes, Alita Battle Angels screenwriter Leta Kalogridis. I hope I pronounced that right. I've still not seen that movie. So, yeah. There you go.
All right. Next up, Tilda Swinton explained why her Avengers Endgame scene had to be reshot. Apparently, the gist of the story is that that it was rewritten.
Right.
So and a couple of plot points had been changed, so they had to tweak the scene and tweak the Ancient One's costume. So there's that.
Mm-hmm. Next up, Falcon and Winter Soldier. Everything to know about the Disney MCU series. So we know that the Falcon and Winter Soldier is going to have a buddy cop show. We don't know. Well, I guess we didn't know the gist of what's going to happen to it, but this article has, I guess, what they know up until now and what potentially is going to be about. So if you're curious about that, you can go check that out.
All right, next up, there is a rumor out there that the WandaVision Disney Plus show may end up giving the Scarlet Witch her most important comics power. The rumor is, according to a podcast, that the Scarlet Witch will get her reality-altering powers, and it's basically over the course of the show, Wanda's going to come into her power set, and the reality-altering powers from the comic are going to make their way into the MCU.
Again, this is from a podcast, and
right.
Apparently people reporting it as
pure rumor.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like some rumors probably maybe not need to be reported on. That's kind of, it's kind of at a certain point. Anyway, but that is a rumor. I mean, that one it could happen, sure. Because if you think about it, because I know there was that other rumor that she was going to be responsible for bringing mutants into the MCU, but that's also a rumor. So, Grey's Anatomy's Alex Landy, ready to be Marvel's Shang-Chi. We talked about another person who was also wanting to, or potentially in the running to be Shang-Chi, and this guy says, Alex Landy says, it would be dope to play Shang-Chi in Marvel Studios' upcoming film. The actor who plays Dr. Nico Kim has thrown his hat into the ring. Oh, yeah, right. Grey's Anatomy. Duh. So, yeah, somebody else wants to be Shang-Chi. I'm still kind of bucking for the other dude, personally.
The other dude from the Tarantino movie that's coming out?
Yeah, oh yes, right. He is going to
Michael Moe, I think it is. I'm not
going to hold that against him, but right. Yeah, I think he was also in the Street Fighter series, that little web series that happened.
Right.
So,
right. The guy that played Ryu.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see how that pans out in the coming months, years. I don't know, whenever that happens.
Or Ryu. All right. The kindergarten cop that we all remember is playing a teacher in Stan Lee's superhero kindergarten. So Arnold Schwarzenegger
It's not a tumor.
is going to voice kindergarten teacher Arnold Armstrong in Stan Lee's superhero kindergarten. The animated children's series was the final project developed by Stan Lee before he passed in November of 2018. The series is inspired by Kindergarten Cop, the 1990 comedy directed by Ivan Reitman and starring Arnold the Terminator.
Who is your daddy and what
Does he do? Oh my gosh. Oh boy.
So yes, that's a thing that's happening, and I'm not sure if it's when that's coming out. But apparently, yeah, there's a story about that, and Arnold and Stanley had some plans or had similar thoughts about Kindergarten Cop, and now it's something animated, I guess. Anthony Michael Hall and Sherry Som, whom I feel like I know from another name, but joins Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yes, that Anthony Michael Hall.
Alrighty.
Who will be playing Mr. Kitson, whom Marvel describes as the fiendish ruler of an alien empire. The planet Kitson briefly appeared in May 24th episode. I am so behind in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't know what's going on. You know who Anthony Michael Hall is. We don't really have to do that. But Weird Science, folks. Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, all of that. All right, he did do that show. And Sherry Som will play another alien, Atara, which I actually know somebody by that name. That's funny. An aggressive Chronicom who wants something from our team. And she was in the Fosters, that Freeform channel show, which I've heard some people like. And she's also going to be in Lock and Key, that's coming up too. So yeah, there you go. Next up.
Alrighty. The New Mutants reshoots still haven't happened, according to Simon Kinberg.
But apparently they will, and that the movie is now still coming, or now it's coming out in 2020.
Right, in April 2020. So there's still time for it, but since it's been pushed back, but it is definitely still on the Marvel schedule.
Yes. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse animator shares video of her acting out scenes for reference. So Emma She, I'm hoping that's how she pronounces her name. I do not know. Put out a video that shows her going through various shots, because she says in this article, as an animator, when she was going to school as an animator, she learned that in order to get kind of shots you want, you needed to be some reference point. So some of the shots that they've done for in the Spider-Verse, she's done on video herself.
Nice.
A still of one, the infamous fry eating scene. So that's a neat little video. I hadn't watched it yet, but seems cool. Next up.
Speaking of Into the Spider-Verse, Jake Johnson has been cast in ABC's Stumptown as Gray McConnell, the male lead opposite series lead Kobe Smulders. Stumptown is an adaptation of a comic book.
It is. And Maria Hill is apparently in it.
Yep.
All right. Titans behind the scenes video teases Isai Morales' Slade Wilson's look. Isai? Is it Isai? Isai? I know I've heard the name before. I don't know. Either way, and that's in Brazilian or Portuguese, so I don't know what that is saying. But yeah, there's a behind the scenes video, and at some point he'll be coming to Titans. Next,
Harley Quinn's Kaylee Cuoco teases the Harley Quinn animated series with new art. So Kaylee Cuoco was voicing Harley Quinn, and she shared a new piece of artwork from the show.
which you can see if you're watching the video. I mean, it looks good. Sure, it looks Tim-esque.
Right.
So cool beans on that. Swamp Thing DC Universe series casts Michael Beach as Nathan Ellery, which slightly confuses me a little bit because if you think about it, Michael Beach was in Aquaman, but then again, his spoiler, his character dies. So is this a reincarnated? No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, but yeah, he's going to be in the Swamp Thing show as a character. I'm not familiar with Swamp Thing enough to know who this person might be, but apparently he's a villain. So there is also, which I don't think I have in this thing, there's a teaser trailer that is out for Swamp Thing that dropped sometime this week. So you can go check that out if you're interested.
Okay.
Next up,
Batman versus the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had a post-credits scene which debuted a new threat. So taking a page from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the animated movie which pit the Dark Knight against the sewer-dwelling crime fighters from NYC, apparently have the Shredder entering into an alliance with Ra's al Ghul, and I don't know what's going on with the post-credit scene. You have to watch it.
Yep, sadly not being voiced by Uncle Phil, who passed on.
Alrighty.
Who also played, he played Shredder in the show. So, anywho, Batman writer Tom King co-writing New Gods movie with Ava DuVernay. So this first came out as rumor early in the weekend. Come to find out, it was confirmed shortly thereafter. So not only, we got some more Tom King coming up a little bit later, but this was cool to see. I would imagine it has, and I feel like there was Ava DuVernay came out and said that she really liked Mr. Miracle also at some point.
I think so.
I know she's a big fan of Big Barda, but
right.
And I would imagine if that is the case, then that could be why Tom King got tasked with this. So good on him. Especially with all the controversy that he has been having to deal with. Maybe controversial kind of strong, but all of the silliness that he's had to deal with his stuff. I would almost dare say, including maybe some would argue some of what we said about Heroes in Crisis earlier, but no. Moving right along.
Next up, the Hellboy reboot.
Take the next one too.
Has finished its disastrous box office run with a dismal total of $21.9 million. Obviously, it doesn't have the same budget as Endgame, but $21.9 million is pretty bad. I think we have a sound effect for this.
I was hoping you were going to do it. Yep, you beat me to it.
So that's that. The next story is Hellboy's David Harbour says Marvel stuff has spoiled us for other comic book movies. So that's some sore loserness right there, yo.
Kinda. So we should go ahead and say that he did also recognize that it's not Marvel's fault, according to this article, that Hellboy didn't do as well. It also, quote unquote, it also had major problems. He noted, added that it will be, quote unquote, fun movie to rent or see on a flight. Brutal self-burn. I don't know what that means, but actually I do know what that means because sometimes flight movies or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, that whole
but see, the thing is, we didn't need it. So you know what we do with things we don't need. So,
like with a big ass gun, like Hellboy has.
It's inspired by a shotgun sound effect. Shout out to Eclectic. I am Eclectic on Twitter.
shout out to Doom because that sounds like the Doom shotgun.
Right, and shout out to John Wick too because he makes a lot of use of shotguns in the movies as well.
Yes. But I was gonna say real quick that if that last part hadn't been said about he was like, well, it wasn't just what he recognized the faults of his own movie. I would have been like, people have been joining other movies outside of Marvel, like I don't know, the DC movie, well, specifically Shazam and Aquaman,
right?
And of course, there have been other comic book I hear people liking that Brightburn movie. That's not necessarily a comic book movie, but it's kind of in that vein. So I'm like, whatever the heck he was talking about with that thing, was it whatever?
You got me. I was about to say David Harbour. You know what you can do with that? So
yes.
Moving on.
Shout out to Doom. Anyway, Vagrant Queen, Adrienne Ray to star in as the Queen of a Galactic Kingdom in adaptation of sci-fi comic, on Sci-Fi. So I don't know who this young lady is, but okay, and I don't know this book either. So, but more power to both of them.
All right.
Because
cool.
That's a nice picture.
All right. You know what? I got something else for David Harbour.
You can't handle the truth.
So moving on.
Yeah, so Sci-Fi has announced a series order to a TV adaptation of Vault Comics' Vagrant Queen, starring a Black Queen of a Galactic Kingdom who's on the run from those trying to kill her. Not only is the series one of the few out there that highlights Black women in sci-fi, but it is also going to be written and directed by a team of only women, which is a point that I wanted to bring up, and that's pretty awesome.
Alrighty.
I wanted to say, I thought Killjoy wasn't like that. Killjoy is a good sci-fi comic. I mean, not sci-fi comic, but a good show, by the way, if you get a chance to. It has nothing to do with this, but it was also on Sci-Fi. Dark Matter, also good. That was also actually another comic book, but I don't know. So hopefully this is going to be as good as those. Sounds like it could be. Next up, we head into the comic book news.
Transition.
Yep.
Alrighty. First story. Agents of Atlas is returning with a new #1 in August. So Greg Pak and Jeff Parker are teaming up with artists Gang Hyuk Lim and Carlo Pagulayan to launch a new Agents of Atlas 5-issue limited series. That's going to include the latest version of the team and the classic roster.
Yes. So I guess it's a classic team up.
No! Go classic team up. Shout out to Classic Materia. Every time I see him or talk to him and I bring that up, he laughs. I love that version. I love that version of the Classic Materia, of the classic team up theme song.
Yep. So according to this, it seems that okay. So the new team will continue their mission after the Asgardian conflict with the current team, and then there's going to be a second story with Jeff Parker that has the old team, which at least 1 or 2 members of these are dead. So I'm assuming they're just going back into the annals.
We'll see.
Or at least one of them. I don't know. I know Gorilla Man is around in Avengers, but Namor is dead. So this can't be a new thing. And I don't know who in the world M33 is. But anyway, that's the thing.
I think that's the robot guy running around in Agents of Atlas. He looks like the guy from Futurama.
Oh,
the robot, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see in August. DC Pearson tackles Winter Soldier for Marvel Comics Presents. So, in other ways to get into comics, be in the movie featuring the person that you're writing.
There you go.
So yeah, DC Pearson, if you remember, Captain America: Winter Soldier was the Apple guy.
Oh, that's who that is. Oh, okay.
Apparently, I don't know who that is either. But
you remember the Apple guy who?
No, I remember from the movie.
Okay.
I didn't know.
As soon as you said that, I was like, "Oh, that guy." Okay.
Right. Like I did not know the Apple guy's name, so I was like, okay, well, sure. But yeah, he's apparently best known as a comedian and the author of a novel. and of course he's the Apple guy from from Winter Soldier. Which, weirdly enough, this seeing this article kind of almost made me want to watch Winter Soldier again.
I always want to watch Winter Soldier.
Of course. Moving right along.
Honestly, that's one of the movies. It's one of the Marvel movies I can literally put on in the background. Don't have to watch it, but I know what's going on because I know all the audio cues.
Right. It's probably one of the top 5 movies.
There you go.
Marvel movies, I should say.
Yep. Absolutely. One of my top. So
yeah. Which that's a list I haven't done in a while. And I don't know. I probably should have said that before I thought about that. But regardless, Captain Marvel herds cats in the all ages title. So her and Chewie got some herding to do, I guess. Captain Marvel will take on her hardest job yet, literally herding cats, well, flirking, and a new all-ages title limited series from IDW's Marvel Action line, as announced by IO9. So Marvel Action Captain Marvel will be written by Sam Maggs with art from Sweeney Boo and Brittany Peer, and will focus on Carol Danvers spending time on Earth as she discovers that many of New York's bodega cats, which is cats who live in family-run stores, have been replaced by Flurkin. So next time, Agent 70, you go into a bodega, watch them cats.
No wonder they're all fat. All right. Next up, artist Jeff Shaw is exiting the Guardians of the Galaxy book early for an Image book. So he's leaving with July's Guardians June's Guardians number 6, because the next artist, Corey Smith, is going to start on July's Guardians of the Galaxy number 7. Shaw was originally solicited to do number 7, and that would have been his last issue. Apparently, Shaw was stolen away by a writer to do an Image book. That writer is Donny Cates, who's also writing Guardians of the Galaxy. So it's all good.
I like how you said that there. It was like, hey, some writer stole it from me. I was like, oh, wait, it's me.
Yep.
So, and probably if he didn't put it on, I'm pretty, well, I don't know if it would have caused that big of an uproar, but, I'm sure somebody would have had some words about it. But that's, okay, cool. Marvel Comics 1000, number 1000 variant changing after accidentally using DC art. So yeah, I saw this unfold on
online
on Twitter. So because the image went around to where this person, I don't know who it is, put out the image of the Marvel Comics 1000 variant cover, which let me see if we can put it in here. Which, as you can see, is chock full of stuff.
It's a collage, but one image within the collage,
right here in this corner, if you're watching the video,
is not a Marvel image.
Right. Shows a couple of guys kissing, which people instantly were like, hey, that's not Marvel, that's not from Marvel. But then there was also comparisons because there are having similar kisses between Hulkling and Wiccan, that some people brought up. But that particular image came from a DC comic book, causing I think
that's a problem, because this is, even though it's it was work for hire, it's still a problem because it was designed for this number 1000 issue. I have a copy of the physical copy of the Marvel previews, and that image is still in there.
Well, yeah, you can't do anything
in the previews.
Yeah, so that's kind of sucky. So, which caused Nicola Scott to react. That's my gay kiss art. I'm getting a check, right?
Yeah.
The image was of Alan Scott, kissing his partner. So, like I said, people had a time with this until the change happened. And it was amusing to watch. It's kind of sad also, but amusing to watch.
Right. So, but ultimately, they're able to change it in time for the printing of the book, but not in time for the printing of the previews.
Yep. So I wouldn't say that would be a collector's item, but hey, hold on to it anyway.
Everybody want to get that copy of previews.
I know, right? It's like, who would have thought you would ever want, anyone would ever want a copy of previews for that? But anyway, next up.
I'm gonna do this one too. So let's see. Classic Marvel villains strike in Bring On the Bad Guys variant. So as part of the Marvel 80th anniversary, they're going to have variant covers of classic Marvel heroes going head to head with some of their most iconic foes with all new covers.
Nefarious? Really? I figured, well, okay, sure. Yeah, make early offenders, sure. There's Thanos, which Thanos is on his own book, so that kind of makes sense, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Abomination for Mortal Hulk, which we talked about earlier. Red Skull, Captain America. If you're watching the video, you can see some of these. Killmonger.
Mm-hmm.
MCU version Killmonger.
Right, the more recognizable one, unfortunately.
Yes, and that looks like I feel like I know who's no, never mind. I thought I knew whose art that was, but anyway. So yeah, there is that, and a bunch of other that's going to happen. So cool. Next up, Marvel gives Betty Ross a new gamma transformation in Mortal Hulk. We kind of sort of talked about it earlier when we talked about Immortal Hulk.
Right, we didn't spoil it, but we definitely teased it.
Right. So yeah, she's got a new transformation that's, as Agent 70 said, is a mixer for two previous ones. And we'll probably be talking more about that next issue. Next up.
Alrighty, Marvel's Unbeatable Squirrel Girl is ending with the upcoming issue number 50. So the series is going to end with issue number 50 later this year. It's not because it's being canceled, though. According to series writer Ryan North, it's because the creative team believes they've brought the story to its natural conclusion. Which
doesn't happen that often, so, it makes sense.
Right. The character's not going anywhere. The characters will still be around.
Right. Although, well, no, because I was about to say, well, if they had more stories, why cancel the book? But at the same time, it's like, you know what? When you finish your story, you want to go on to other things, then you do. Then, you wrap it up and push on.
Right. The character's still in like the Marvel Rising stuff, so we're not going to miss.
Well, yeah, and it's not like Squirrel Girls has been in any main, mainline books.
Just wait.
Well, I mean, there was a time where she was,
right.
If you remember her time as the Avengers nanny and that kind of stuff,
right? But we'll see where that goes.
Right? Yeah, maybe if that new Warriors thing goes off the ground, they'll start up a new Warriors book, and that'll happen or something.
Right.
Next up, get that out of the way. Marvel's Avengers project will be at E3 2019, and in fact, yes, on June 11th, they will be showing some stuff from that during E3, during one of the press during the Square Enix press conference, and I cannot wait.
Okay.
I don't know what that. I mean, obviously, because we've been waiting for information on that game that Crystal Dynamics is doing, and now we will get that. So,
do we know what type of game it's supposed to be or not?
We've got rumors because knowing what type of games that Crystal Dynamics does, it might be kind of, well, we don't know. We don't officially know what it's going to be, but there's rumors saying it could be not necessarily Tomb Raider-ish, but like third-person action type.
Okay.
So, but we don't fully know because we had, like I said, they've been dark for a while on that one.
Okay.
So we may get to see some footage, we may not, or it may just be like stills, sometimes depending on what they feel like showing. But hey, that's like 2 weeks away, so
we'll find out soon enough.
Yep.
Alrighty. Vader Immortal finally makes Alderaanian wolf cats part of the Star Wars canon. So the VR game Vader Immortal was recently released, and in the game, these wolf cats from Alderaan have become part of Star Wars canon finally, apparently.
Well, so I mean, it's not a big surprise because everything that Star Wars and the story group and all that, everything that's been pretty much coming out is canon at this point. So that's not that, including all the VR stuff. So that's not that. That's a big deal, but it's not that big of a deal.
I got you.
It's a big deal because, you know, I guess coming out of the ODU, the extended universe, then yeah, it's a big deal because there's just them mining it back again and using it in the current canon. So cool beans. I don't know too much about the wolf cats. I know about the lost cats. You know about those too.
All right.
Anyway, Stan Lee's ex-manager arrested on elder abuse charges. So good.
Yeah.
Earlier this month, a warrant has been issued for the arrest of Kia Morgan, late comics legend Stan Lee's ex-manager. Morgan has been now arrested. According to Deadline, Morgan was arrested in Arizona on Saturday in a joint effort by LA Police Department commercial crimes detectives and Scottsdale Phoenix's police. Morgan allegedly isolated Lee from his friends and family and is being charged with crimes including false imprisonment, fraud, and forgery. I do know of a case of some sort of similar elder abuse, and I wish more arrests like these get handed down, and in one particular, I hope really happens. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay.
So, yes.
All righty. So, you know,
using elders for their money is not a good thing. I would say that even if I did not know a personal involvement with one.
I was about to say that's Roddy Cat out for justice.
Yeah. Don't get me started because anyway. Next up,
some sad news to report. This is unfortunately something that Roddy Cat and I both failed to bring up last week when it was a little bit more timely. But I'm glad that we had a chance to bring it up today. Unfortunately, we lost a very, 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 very talented colorist and
prolific.
And definitely prolific and a great a great person and a great comics creator in Justin Ponsor. He passed away on May 18th, of this year, and he had been undergoing treatment for cancer. And he'd had his ups and downs. He'd been chronicling it online. So the last information that I had was that he was actually doing okay. And you know, it was very shocking for me to find out that he had passed away, and the outpouring of grief on social media was such that, you know, it really helped me to process it and to actually understand, you know, more about how vital colorists have become in the, you know, in the digital coloring age. Something that PCN_Dirt mentioned prior to the show also made me think about what colorists used to have to do to make comics as appealing as they were when folks of a certain vintage were growing up.
Right. And some of that stuff ended up being, you know, innovative stuff that probably some of which is probably being used now, or at the very least some techniques that have been used to some effect,
right,
going forward.
Right, like pre-digital coloring or the early stages of digital coloring. I wanted to just read a few of a few tweets in a long tweet chain published by Devin Lewis, who used to be an assistant at Marvel, and I just wanted to focus on a couple of the tweets that really stuck out to me. So. So Devin Lewis is recalling a point where you know, Ponsor's a little behind on a deadline and has to be reminded to zoom out, you know, to take a step back and not get bogged down in all the heavy details of the pages that he's working on. And Ponsor described his process. And there's a couple of these tweets I wanted to read because it's so informative about his process and about how much thought goes into or should go into coloring. First, he would lay out the entire issue and read it against the script. So he's looking at the inked art at this point. From there, he built a specific color palette for that particular issue derived from a larger color palette he built for each particular series. He changed the series palette's hues depending on the emotionality of each scene. Quieter moments got a cooler palette. More intense or emotional ones were warmer. He'd then pinpoint every light source in every scene and intellectualize how that ought to affect his color approach. And nothing ever fell through the cracks. So in sum, his work began and ended with story. Is the setting an interior or an exterior? Should the light be a clinical white or a warmer incandescent yellow? How far is the light from the subject? What's the aperture around the bulb, and how should that frame the character? And how should all these factors affect the literal color, quality, and vibrancy of the light and objects themselves? And only after figuring all that out would Justin begin coloring. His approach to which was equally laborious and insightful. I was gobsmacked reading that. I retweeted it. No, I liked it and retweeted the first tweet in the chain so that the tweet would gain more exposure. I would suggest going to @EDevinLewis and looking up this tweet and going through this description of Justin Ponsor's work. I wanted to add finally that I met Justin Ponsor once at New York Comic Con. He was probably there a number of times, but the time I met him was relatively recently. It was right after Death of Wolverine had come out. And I believe it was Jay Leaston, the inker, who pointed him out to me and said, "Hey, the colorist is right here." He was like at the booth right next door, and or the table right next door in Artist Alley at New York Comic Con. He said, "Hey, the colorist is right here. You can get him to sign this book too." And I rifled through my bag of comics, and I realized that he had colored a whole host of comics that I had in my bag on me. So I had Justin Ponsor autograph a number of books, and I chatted with him. I looked at what he had on his table. I don't remember if I bought a print or anything like that. I think he had actually run out of some stuff that people had bought. But I remember him as a really pleasant guy, very cool, and I realized that as I review something that I guess I had always taken for granted in the modern age of digital coloring, is how much coloring really does affect. And this is part of a conversation that we started to have when we do our end of the year voting, especially when we added all the awards for the various creator categories. And we've definitely learned to appreciate more the effects of color in comics. I was definitely growing up very focused on the pencilers, because that's really the nuts and bolts of the art of comic books. But more so than even inkers nowadays, I think the colorists are responsible for the vibrant and beautiful comics that we're blessed to be able to review each week.
Yep. So yeah, rest in peace, Mr. Ponsor.
Yeah, rest in power.
And, hey.
Yeah, F cancer.
Yeah, definitely F cancer. Absolutely. And we should appreciate all of the people, and granted, there's a lot of times we don't think about this stuff because, someone like him who's a little more higher profile than some of the other people in the industry or whatever. But sometimes it's good to take some time to to learn about your creator scene, especially on a book that you like, even down to, or up to the editor and that kind of stuff, because they all give something to the book.
Exactly, they all contribute to the book. They all have roles to play. Everyone from Steve Wacker, who was the editor on Miss Marvel, who used to be a editor in the Spidey office, but was editing Miss Marvel and really contributed to the creation of that character with G. Willow Wilson and Sana Amanat.
Right.
So like as Roddy, that's an excellent point. We really should familiarize ourselves with the creators behind these books.
Yeah, and give them their flowers, as some folks would say on social media.
There you go.
While they're still alive. But moving along from that, the Umbrella Academy, the Umbrella Chronicles, different thing, to receive a one-shot Christmas special from Gabriel Ba and Gerard Way. So yeah, it probably looks like it may or may not have something to do with the Netflix series, which I've not seen and I've heard some people like. But the comics are still happening. Let's see, on June 7th, the Umbrella Academy Hotel Oblivion #7 is due to be released. And now we know what it is. It's basically a Christmas special one shot. So there you go. Fans of Umbrella Academy, have at it. Next up.
Alrighty, next up, She-Ra gets a graphic novel adaptation titled Legend of the Fire Princess.
Sure.
It's a new original graphic novel based on the animated Netflix original series. Okay.
Mm-hmm. To which I still have yet to check out, but I hear good things.
Same, I have not yet watched that.
Yeah. But yeah, it will arrive in early 2020 from writer GGDG. And artist Paulina Gancho.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And based on the stories of Noelle Stevenson. So cool. Next up.
Let's see.
Classic Tron figures coming from Diamond Select. I have Dirt was still here.
Yeah, someone tell PCN _Dirt.
I feel like I probably should have put this in our back channel, but he may have already. A lot of times he will have known about this already, and so there's a good chance he probably already did.
Yeah,
but nevertheless,
find him.
Yeah, but nevertheless, there was going to be a Diamond Select. It's like a Select Wave 1 set of 3 figures. Looks like you have Tron, you have Sark, and I can't remember what Flynn. Yeah, so there you go. Infiltrator, Flynn, Sark, and Tron. 7 inches. It'll be $74.90, so $75 for 3 figures. And it looks like there's also going to be figures from Star Trek Into Darkness to, you know what? Never mind. We'll just keep on to this because that's not, it's not relevant. So yeah, there you go. If you're a fan of Tron and you want some figures, there you go. Figures coming. Coming when? Sometime this year. Next.
Transformers Masterpiece Edition MP46 Beast Wars Black Arachnia has been released or is going to be released.
Yeah. So yeah, December 19th is when Black Arachnia comes out, and true to form, those Masterpiece Edition Transformers are way expensive. I kind of want this because I like that character, and it looks good. But that's a lot of money. $140. That's coming out this December. So some nice person want to get me that. That's great, but nah, I can't do nothing for that. Next up, so what?
No, yeah, I think this is yours.
Yeah, Stepan Sajic shares art from. I really hope I'm not screwing that name up, but I don't think I've heard anyone say it out loud. shares art from unnamed Black Label Batman comic. So this is the artist of Sunstone, and he's also actually the current Aquaman artist, if I'm not mistaken. And he's working on a new Batman project for a DC Black Label. Sajik revealed the project, which is currently unnamed, in a tweet. He answered several follow-up questions, revealing the project would be for DC Black Label and that he would be on the whole series, which is, quote, 3 oversized 60-page issues. Wow, that's a lot. Most comments pointed out that the character looks like a combination of Man-Bat and Batman. And yeah, it kind of does. Some sort of vampiric bat. Reminiscent of Earth 43's Batman. Bat-Dash Man. A vampiric version of Dark Knight. So we'll see whatever the heck that's going to be when it happens. Next.
Alrighty. DC Comics is going to stop double shipping books next year. So remember the Rebirth relaunch saw a lot of titles shipping twice monthly. So DC has since scaled back what it double ships, though a select few titles still remain on a twice a month schedule. So the publisher is going to end double shipping books altogether, and all remaining titles will ship once a month in 2020. That's a good thing.
We don't know.
Yeah, for how long? Yeah, when they need a cash infusion, here comes double shipping.
Mm-hmm. Or some kind of event. No, events have nothing to do with this not double shipping thing because we got to get it out of there. But hey, it's a good thing. We'll see how long that lasts. Because I think what is double shipping? Justice League? I feel like we are reading a book or two that is double shipping, but I could be wrong.
Oh, Batman.
Well, yeah, I'm not reading that, so yeah, y'all, that's on y'all.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I'm like this, yeah. And
I want to say Justice League too. I'm not sure. I want to say Justice League as well.
Probably, but I'm saying Batman's got like 3 or 4 books. He can stand to do without double shipping. So, oh, here we go. Detective Comics. Well, yeah, Detective Comics, Flash, Wonder Woman, and Justice League looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there you go. Next up, Brian Bendis reveals Young Justice is headed for the DC's Kingdom Come universe, which, as I said earlier when we were talking about Doomsday Clock and I asked that question, like, yeah, it does seem like they're kind of on the fringes of other realms. Like I said, at this point right now, they're in Gem World.
Okay.
So I guess maybe they're staying in the multiverse and going other places. Looks like maybe. And I guess that's where this group is going to go. Or this is almost like well, I wouldn't say it's not like Exiles because that's not true. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so they're going to DC's Kingdom Come, which makes me want to read the Kingdom Come because I don't think I've ever read it.
Okay, that's a bigger surprise than Crisis. I'm gonna be honest, only because that came out a lot later. We were a lot older and maybe had some money in our pockets.
Right. Yeah, but I'm also not that big of DC. I've not always been that big of a DC person, so
it's worth it.
I knew about a lot of this stuff, but it was like I'll get to it at some point, and I never did.
It's worth it. It's definitely worth it. All you have to do is read the original 4-issue series.
Sure. I think I want to say I may actually have bought a copy on Comixology, and it is definitely on. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I know they put a lot of those events on DC Universe, and I believe DC Kingdom Come is actually on one on there also. So, and Comixology has been putting, Comixology Unlimited is definitely have a lot of DC event books too. So if you're on any one of those, you might be able to read that if you're so inclined.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would be very shocked to see Kingdom Come not on the Universe app.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it did because I was going through the app last night actually to just kind of perusing to see what they had and kind of making some lists for myself for down the line. And I believe I did run into Kingdom Come. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's definitely here. The original. That's really all you have.
So like I was saying before we started, like they've been getting a whole lot better with their book offerings, and that's great.
Cool.
On a side note.
Alrighty. Next up, Some news that we have been discussing over the last few weeks. DC has confirmed Tom King's upcoming departure from the core Batman book, but has revealed that those stories are going to continue in a 12-issue Batman Catwoman series drawn by Clayman, and that's scheduled to debut in January of 2020. So, not all is lost for fans of the Batman Catwoman story that King has been writing in the main Batman book.
Right, and I think I can't remember if this was beforehand or during that discussion, but I know Dirt said something about it. We don't know whether this is going to be like an Elseworlds type thing, or because of the Doomsday Clock stuff, or what. But yeah, I guess we'll see, huh? And it's going to be 12 issues, so
right, which should take them up to just short of 100 issues.
Right.
Alrighty.
So next up, last but not least, Batman Who Laughs variant from Miko Tsuyan homages Jim Lee's Hush, which is another event I haven't read, but I do have that.
That's forgivable.
But I have that on Comixology.
Only because, that definitely came along much more recently and at a time when it was a lot harder to keep up with that stuff before we were like reviewing comics on a regular. So
right, and I know Hush is one that people have spoken about in no pun intended or every pun intended Hush Time.
Yeah.
It's some people tend to like that one, but again, I'm not a big DC head, so like a lot of stuff, I'm just coming as educational.
Alrighty. So that brings us to the end of the news. And our last ad read of the night. Our last ad read of the night is for Funko, Fun at First Sight. I made a rhyme. Your home for exclusive collectibles, such as their world-famous Pop Vinyl bobbleheads. Apparel, including t-shirts, hats, and socks, and brand merchandise like custom DIY pop figures, art books, and skateboards. And now the listeners of the Comic Book Chronicles can enjoy 10% off your entire purchase when shopping at Funko. So place your first order with 10% off. And to help keep our show free for you, go to our network website at cspn.us. That's cspn.us. Then click on the Keep Our Podcasts free link at the top of the page. From there, scroll down to the Funko link and place your order. When you get to the checkout, put in the offer code SHOP10 for your 10% off discount. Funko through cspn.us. Do it today.
And as we round the bend to the end of this, wow, I made a rhyme too. Haha. To this here episode of Comic Book Chronicles, I'd like to thank each and every one of you folks from coming out. Pretty sure we do not have movie protocol next week, so we'll be back.
I was about to say, speaking of movie protocol, my plans didn't work out for Godzilla King of the Monsters, but hopefully I'll have a chance to watch it at some point this weekend and be able to talk a little bit about it next week. So,
all right then. And with that, folks, thank you. Same bat time, same bat channel next week, 9:30-ish p.m. Or hey, after the fact, or the day after the fact, on your audio listening places of source. And of course, for Agent 70, who is at Agent_70, who is at Agent_70 at Twitter and Instagram. PC_Dirt on Twitter, PopCultureNet on Twitter, PopCultureNetwork.com, and the various sites therein. Tim DOGG98, whom I'm not sure if I actually mentioned earlier, but Tim Dog98 on Twitter, KLIQ Nation, that's DKLIQ on Twitter, TheClickNation.com, CB Cron on Twitter, and Comic Book Resources, where he is writing his face off, as you have seen in a couple of the articles that we put out earlier, or we talked about earlier. And for myself, Roddy Cat on Twitter, News Nerds Need on Twitter, the News Nerds Need Reddit, CB Caps on Instagram, and all that good jazz. You can find this here program on the Cold Slither Podcast Network. That's CSPN.us.
Do it today.
And of course, you can subscribe to this podcast at Google Play or Apple iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and of course the Cold Slither Podcast page on SoundCloud. Not SoundCloud rappers, just using the SoundCloud page. And with that, that wasn't worth that, but thank you. And with that, folks, this has been the Comic Book Chronicles. Peace.
Peace. One.
Good evening, friend. Would you believe it's Dr. Doom?
What's on your mind?
Oh, you insulting tongue, it marks my word well.
Top of this room is you,